أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله اللهم لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما وارزقنا فهم النبيين وحفظ المرسلين اللهم افتح إلينا حكمتك وانشر علينا رحمتك يا ذا الجلال والإكرام الله أكبر لا إله إلا أنت لا إله إلا أنت يا رب العالمين الله أكبر ولله الحمد وصلى اللهم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله الكرام ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and a warm welcome to everyone, and Eid Mubarak to everyone as well. I did not send anybody a message, so this is my Eid Mubarak to you, and I hope everybody had a wonderful, peaceful Ramadan and a beautiful Eid. And I've been told that there are some new students who have just joined in the sessions from today, so inshallah, just you a warm welcome to you as well. You might have to play a bit of catch up to come up to speed to what we've been studying so far. So alhamdulillah, we have the recorded sessions uploaded, and I'm sure you also all got the course material that we are going through, particularly the text of Imam al-Ghazali. So a very brief pointer to note for you to really benefit from these sessions, from these classes. There are a couple of things that I will advise you strongly to do. One of those is to study a text the way the scholars studied prior to this advent of technology, and this is something that has been proven in modern science as well and psychology as well, is to study the text that you will be studying, to do it by hand, to write down or to copy the text by hand. Traditionally, this is how the ulama, it's not like they could just go out in the market and buy textbooks. They copied down every text, they studied by hand, and then they had their own personal copy, and then that's what they studied with whichever scholar was teaching them. So I will strongly recommend you all the PDF that I sent you. Don't take that for granted. Copy down the entire text by hand. Don't copy down my translations. Don't do that. Don't write down my translation. The translation that I have given you in there is just a point of reference. You'll be studying the original text. You're not studying the translation. You're not studying my translation of it. You're studying the original text. So I will be, during the sessions, I will explain, I will translate, and I will elaborate further on what Imam al-Ghazali is saying. Write down the original Arabic by hand. Leave room for note-taking. Leave room for when you want to put in your own translation as well. But write it down by hand. Don't do this typing thing. It doesn't help. Even during your class sessions, avoid the typing. That's not how you do note-taking. Take notes by hand. You don't have, and by the way, there is a technique to note-taking. So most of you who have gone through the academic, system, if you had a proper academic upbringing, there are certain tips and tricks that you do when note-taking. You don't write down exactly what I'm saying, word for word. You see, if you do that, then you're just transcribing the session. You're just transcribing the information. You want to understand what the individual is saying, and then you want to write down your version of it in a summarized form, in few words. The second point to note is that don't wait too long to add meat to your notes. In other words, within a very short period of time after the session, after the lecture, I would say within 24 hours, this is what you would call a circadian cycle. I might talk about that later on, inshallah, when we come to a session on dreams. But within that cycle, you want to process as much of that information you've learned as possible. So don't wait too long before going back to your notes and, putting down or taking down whatever it is that you have studied. Make sure you do it within that short period of time, so that you can, because you've got, we'll talk about memory today, by the way, inshallah. Today our session is going to be a little bit about memory. If we have time, I might actually expand quite a bit on that. You have your short-term memory, your long-term memory, then you have implicit and explicit memory from that. So, the information retention, you want to give it a repetition within a short period of time so that you can retain it. Otherwise, the longer you wait, the more it will dissipate. So you don't want that. And lastly, there is the adab of acquiring knowledge, the adab of seeking knowledge. You want to have, the adab is not just akhlaq, it's not just manners or, saying things like please and thank you and excuse me and all that. Adab is really the discipline, which is more a self-discipline than anything, in how to engage with your fellow colleagues, and then also how to engage with your teachers, and the adab of learning itself, the self-discipline of learning. You don't want to, do things in a shoddy manner. Number one, you want to be consistent in your learning. Number two, you want to make sure that what you do it in the best way possible. So when you're doing your note taking or you're copying down the text, don't do scribblings. Don't do things in a hasty manner so that it's all over the place and it's not something you could even present to yourself 10 years down the line. Do things in a neat way, do things in a beautified way. One of the things that Muslims take pride in is in beautification, in husn, right? We beautify ourselves, we embellish ourselves, right? We wear good clothes, we decorate our homes, this is part of us. So why not give that same discipline, if not more, to your learning and your study and acquisition of knowledge? So, make your notes look beautiful, use different inks, improve on your handwriting, take your time, don't be hasty with it. That's part of the discipline. And that discipline externally will also reflect the discipline internally. One of the things you notice about people, if you want to test this out on yourself or you want to test this out on anybody else, you observe how they do things externally. Like how they pick objects up and how they put objects down and how they put them down, where they put them. Do they return them to their place where they picked it from? And that will give you an indication of the internal state. So if you're somebody who picks up a dish, for example, a plate or a glass, and then you put it down on the table with, like forcefully, making a lot of noise, that turbulence is a reflection of the turbulence in you. It is, because it's not controlled. The motion is not controlled. You see, this is something you can even try. Go to the masjid in any salah of jama'ah where there are a lot of people, and you observe. You don't even need to observe. While you're praying your salah, while you're in the jama'ah, you'll notice something. When everyone goes down in sajda, you will hear this thundering sound. Everybody's knees are hitting the floor. That's a sign of internal turbulence in all those people, because it shows that they are not controlling their bodily emotions. They are not conscious of their own movements. You see, part of salah is that's now discipline, controlling your motion. How you sit, your uprightness, your going up and down. You see, you find people are always shifty. They're doing other things. This is not discipline. Discipline is being in control of yourself. That's essentially the hierarchy that's being presented by Imam al-Ghazali, which inshallah now today we're going to expand quite a bit more on that. So In the previous session, those who have caught up to it, we introduced the heart and its troops. So he gave you an introduction to a hierarchy. And this hierarchy, he said, is that the heart is the king, is the sultan. And the heart has got troops. And then you've got the aql, who is the wazir, or the grand minister, or the grand vizier, prime minister of this kingdom. And then the concupiscent faculty, which is the shahwa, is its administrative department, where you will find all the politicians and the governors and the administrators and all these guys, all these what you would call white collar, the white collar people, the suits. And then you've got the irascible faculty, who is the Adab, and this is the defense force, or the legislative, the law enforcement. And so that department is responsible for defending the dominion from external harm, as well as maintaining the law and order internally. And that the soul now is the city in which all these departments operate from. And the body and the extensions of the limbs are all the part of the kingdom now. These are the farms and the mines and where all the resources come from, right? And the eyes are now the spies to the king. So that's what we're going to start off with today, inshallah. We're going to elaborate now further into how all these departments, how they function and how they serve the money. The section inshallah we'll be looking at today is wadhifatul qalb, the virtue of the heart. Now, what is its prime benefit? Why was it there? Why has it been given that maqam of being the king or the sultan in this dominion of yours? And for those who are new, this is on page 17 of the text. And the page numbers are in Arabic, so you'll have to figure that out if you don't know. Now, so he says, "I'lam anna shahwata wal ghadaba khadimani lin nafs." That the shahwa and the ghadab, you should know that the shahwa and the ghadab are fetching servants of the soul. Fetching servants means they do this back and forth thing. So they belong to the soul, but they govern the body. So they are back and forth. They will serve the soul by serving the body, and they will serve the body by serving the soul. So, for example, your appetite of hunger, your body will feel a pang when the senses pick up, there's food required. If it's not hunger, it might be something else that will indicate that nutrition is required or food is required. This is going to be indicated by whichever part of the body. So maybe your blood sugar will go down, or you'll start feeling some weakness or lightheadedness or something or the other. And your brain is going to pick up these signals. Now, your brain is going to communicate this information directly to the soul. Your body will communicate with the soul. And in this case, your brain is going to indicate it to the intellect, directly to the intellect. This is the information that has been picked up. So we need to make something, we need to do something here. So the intellect is going to allocate this in that hierarchy of ours, is going to allocate this duty to the administrative faculty, which is your concupiscence. And your concupiscence is going to communicate now directly with the stomach. This is where your appetite is going to come in. What is it that you desire to eat now? You see, you feel like eating something. So you're hungry. We've already established that food is required. Now, what do you feel like eating? That feel like eating, that's the department of the concupiscence. So in one aspect, it is serving the volition of the self, the desire. It's serving the soul to fulfill a desire. And in the other aspect, it is now serving the body in terms of fulfillment of a requirement.
So this is what they do. They are fetching servants of the soul. جاذبان يحفظان أمر الطعام والشراب والنكاح لعمل الحواس. So they preserve the affairs of eating, of drinking, of copulation to the service of the senses. The senses are what have determined that there is a need or a requirement for something. For instance, you go into the kitchen and your sense of smell picks up the aroma of food, and then the desire kicks in. That smells nice. Can I have a little bit of that? You see? And so this is what they do. This is the concupiscent faculty is going to now allocate this requirement. Or you see food and it becomes tempting. Or you see drink or something, or whatever it is that your senses are going to pick up with regards to those two faculties. There's a lot of information that your senses pick up. Here he's talking about with regards to these two faculties. Then it is going to begin whatever it has picked up from there up until to the satisfaction of the soul. The intellect comes in when it needs to regulate between a need, a requirement, and just a desire, or an admixture of two. So the decision to do something now, whether to eat or not, or whether to drink or not, that's done by the intellect. So while you're fasting, for example, why don't you just give in to the desire when the hunger kicks in? Or when you get the smell of food or something or the other? Why don't you just do that? Because the intellect recognizes that even though there is a need, it should not be fulfilled right now. Even though there is a want, it should not be fulfilled right now. Because the intellect has recognized a higher ordinance. It's not just government here. There is another governance from above that has given that directive of or a prohibition of no. You see, the intellect makes that decision. ثم النفس خادم الحواس شبكة العقل وجواسيسه. Thus then now does the soul serve the senses by acting as a net for the intellect and its spies. So the senses are the spies. The jawasis, the jasus is the spy. Jassa, as the root word, means to probe or to poke. And this is what the senses do. They're always probing reality and grabbing information, drawing in information from the external environment. Now, all that information, where does it go? It comes in through the brain. The senses report to the brain. All that information comes in. And then that information from the brain comes to the sadr, the breast. Remember, the soul is an ethereal body. So it's got a facade. It's got a frontal, it's got a frontal sort of a barrier, I would say. Like it's a point of entry for everything that's coming in from the material into now the ethereal. It's a point of entry. So the soul acts as this net that's going to draw in all that information and give it now to the intellect, who can now decide what to do with that information. This is what he means here. This is how once the concupiscent and the irascible have taken care of the bodily functions, then now whatever information is acquired further than that is the soul can now serve the senses by acting as a net for all that information to deliver all that information acquired from the external into now the internal for the intellect to use that. يبصر بها صنع البارئ جلت قدرته. It is with these that the intellect can see the where is it? صنع البارئ, the forms of the exalted one that he has created. It is through this mannerism that the intellect is able to see the forms of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that he has created. This is how, because the intellect cannot directly engage with the environment. Like your mind cannot touch reality. Your mind cannot directly see reality. It sees through the eyes. It hears through the ears. You see, it tastes through the tongue. And so there is a sort of a conversion that needs to take place. This is the soul that is in between now. It has to acquire from the material, convert that into the immaterial. ثم الحواس خادم العقل. Thus now do the senses serve the intellect. This is how the senses will serve the intellect. So it comes in through the sense, it enters into the brain information, and then it comes to the sadr, the breast now. This is the body, the shell that houses the heart. So in the same mannerism that the physical heart is inside this physical chest, the same goes for the soul. The spiritual heart is inside that spiritual chest. This is why these terminologies are often interchangeable and synonymic when scholars use it. You'll find someone like a scholar use the word sadr for the heart, because that's where you find it, you see. And the bigger the spiritual space, the chest, yani the sadr, the bigger it is, the more expansive it is, the more room the heart has to expand. This is a very unique thing, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, Alam nashrah laka sadrak? Did we not expand for you your breasts? Why? So that he could have a greater understanding. You see, a much more broader understanding of reality. The sadr, if you want an allegory, in Surah An-Nur, inshallah we'll come to that ayah and expand more. The sadr could be likened to al-mishkat. So he says, Allahu nuru samawati wal ard, mathalu nurihi ka mishkat. He starts with the mishkat. Fiha misbah. So the mishkat, which is now the sadr, fiha, in it now, is the misbah, the lamp, which is the lamp of reason, the intellect. Al-misbah fi zujajatin. The misbah, the lamp, the intellect, is in a glass orb or a sphere, a glass orb. That's like the heart now. So that's what the sadr is. So this is where the information comes in, and then it passes through this sort of a filter. This is a filter, and then enters into the intellect. وَهُوَ لِلْقَلْبِ. So ثُمَّ الْحَوَاسِ خَادِمُ الْعَقْلِ. Thus do the senses serve the intellect. وَهُوَ لِلْقَلْبِ سِرَاجٌ وَشَمْعَةٌ يُبْصِرُ بِنُورِهِ الْحَضْرَةِ الْإِلَهِيَةِ. And this intellect is to the heart and the translation would be, I translate it as a lamp and a candle. Yeah, that's perfect. Sirajun wa sham'atun, a lamp and a candle, by which its light, it will be able to see. The heart will be able to see the divine presence. So previously he said that the only way you can come to know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala begins by knowing His creation. And this is the alam. So the created realm, the alam, is a facilitator of ilm. Alam is an ismu ala, a noun of instrumentation. So it instruments what it represents. So the alam facilitates the ilm. And then the ilm is what gets converted into ma'rifah. So knowledge is one thing, and then understanding that knowledge is a different thing. You see? So you study the realm that Allah has created. You study it in its outward form, and then in its inward form, and then you understand the contingency of everything in terms of where it has come from and who it has come from. So through knowing everything, you come to know the Creator Himself. لأن الجنة وهي نصيب الجوف أو الفرج محتقرة في جانب تلك الجنة. Because the paradise that the stomach and the genitals delight in, it pales in comparison to that paradise. In other words, it's not to the satisfaction of this world. So even though you will study this world, That's not the reason. You don't study this world for this world. You don't study creation for creation or to indulge in creation. This is very sophisticated in its understanding. What I said was more simplistic. In its sophistication, you would say that you don't, because this is the modern age, right? Why do they study the things they study? Like, why do they have all these programs in universities and everything? What's the purpose of their learning? Their purpose of their learning is to the manipulation of reality. Like they'll study physics so that they can study, ultimately study technology, so that they can then produce technology. For what purpose? 90% of it is used in entertainment. I'm talking about technology used as far as the public is concerned. There's the other technology that they use to kill each other, right? Military. But 90% of the technology that is produced for the public is entertainment. 10% is used for work. Really, that 10% of it is used for work. Anyone, you can all look at your phones, your cell phones, and all the applications you have on your cell phones. One or two, maybe three are the ones that you will use for functionality, insofar as calling it a telephone. Maybe the app for calling and the app for messaging, and maybe email. Everything else is passive. You might use your calculator once in a while, or you might use this one or that one. Everything else is entertainment. YouTube, Facebook, all those things. See, it's to the delight of the sensory realm. If it is being pursued, it's to the delight of the sensory realm. But that's not why you're doing it. That's not why you should be doing it. That's not why you should be studying that. Because the paradise or those delights that you engage in here, it pales in this is the truth that we believe in. They of course don't recognize that. This is why they keep doing it, and they justify it accordingly. They don't believe in paradise. They don't believe in the hellfire. They don't believe that such delights can actually be attained in a life to come, an afterlife. They don't believe in all that. And their fallacy is that because they don't believe in it, it doesn't exist. That's their fallacy. Because they don't believe in it, it doesn't exist. If they believe in it, it might exist. ثم العقل خادم القلب. Thereafter now, this is how the aql will serve the heart. وَالْقَلْبُ مَخْلُوقٌ لِنَذْرِ جَمَالِ الْحَضْرَةِ الْإِلَهِيَةِ. And the heart was created only but to see the divine presence. فَمَنْ اجْتَهَدَ فِي هَذِهِ الصُّنَعَةِ فَهُوَ عَبْدٌ حَقٌّ مِنْ غِلْمَانِ الْحَضْرَةِ. Whoever struggles in this artisanship, in this craftsmanship of working on, like this is your career, right? If you ask a Sufi, a true Sufi, what his job is, what his occupation is, what his career is, it would be tazkiyatun nafs. This is your true, this is the only real career worthy of the name occupation. Like, what are you occupied with in this world, in this life? What are your preoccupations? See, he highlighted this in the beginning. You see, he said, if you're finding your delight in eating and drinking and copulating, then be like the beasts. Occupy yourself with that. If you find your delight in arguing and backbiting and confrontation and debating others and refuting this one and refuting that one, right? Then preoccupy yourself in the behaviors of the predators. If you find yourself happy in politicking against others, in strategizing and devising and plotting and planning, then preoccupy yourself with those preoccupations. But if you find yourself being of the angelic essence, then your preoccupation should be to the fulfillment of the purpose of your creation. Because that purpose was defined in the divine presence. Alastu bi rabbikum bala shahidna. That's what he means, min ghilman al-hadra, from the youthfulness of that divine presence. Because in that presence, you were. This is more profound because you've got the age of man during the life cycle, and then you've got the ages of man during his existence cycle. So during the life cycle, I would be called an adult, my child would be called a child, right? Or youth. Like my father would be old, I would be young. But in so far as your existential aspect is concerned, your youthfulness began at that point of origin, the pre-worldly stage. When he gathered all the souls, in Surah Al-A'raf, you'll find the ayah, when he gathered all the souls and he asked them to bear witness, testify, am I not your Lord? Bala shahidna, indeed we testify, we affirm this. In other words, that's it, that's your defining occupation. If you want to be in the angelic essence, وَنَحْنُ نُسَبِّهُ بِحَمْدِكَ وَنُقَدِّسُ لَكَ, that's it, that's what the angels do. So that's what you should be preoccupying yourself with. And that's the only real worthy career, you could say. And inshallah, we'll come to that ayah, we'll expand on it more when we do Imam al-Haddad's Lives of Man, inshallah. So now, فمن اجتهد في هذه الصنعة فهو عبد حق من غلمان الحضرة كما قال سبحانه وتعالى وما خلقت الجن والإنس إلا ليعبدون. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said, I did not create man and jinn except but to worship me. Now, worship is a very bad translation. I don't like that translation. The word worship itself, it carries more of a Christian meaning, definition, theological definition. Because the language itself, I mean, English is a modern language. It's not our language. It's never really been our language per se. Our language has always been Arabic, Persian, Urdu, Turkish. These are our languages in Islam. The real word, the proper translation, the more fitting translation, I would say, is servitude. Except but to serve Allah. Because Abdun is really a servant, right? As the slave of Allah. Abdullah is the servant or the slave of Allah. So it's really about servitude. And you are in a mode of, all of creation is in a mode of servitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And each one of those groups has been given a defined mannerism in how they can serve or how they're supposed to serve Allah. From those you've got aqili and then ghayr aqil. You've got the intelligent species and you've got the species that's non-intelligent, like stones or vegetation or the mountains. That doesn't mean they don't have a consciousness. By the way, being intelligent and being conscious are two different things. Intelligence doesn't imply, or one doesn't imply the other. So it doesn't mean that if you don't have intelligence, you're not conscious. Doesn't mean that. Consciousness is you would say, is the awareness of the Lordly presence. And everything in creation, every stone, every pebble, every grain, every particle, atom, every mountain, every cloud, everything, the planets, the stars, the galaxies, they are all aware of the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You'll find this in the Quran as well. I'm not going to tell you where. You have to look for it. But I'll give you an idea. He says Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, after He created the heavens and the earth, He approached them both and told them, come you both, willingly or by force. Come meaning submit to my will. Either you submit willingly or I compel you to do it. And they both, you look at this ayah, find the ayah and look at the ayah. They both said, the heavens and the earth, these two dominions, we submit willingly. We submit willingly. That is a sign of consciousness. To be aware of whom you're serving and to choose to serve willingly is a sign of consciousness. So everything is aware of Allah. And so among these, there are those that are intelligent species who have been given a choice. And then there are those who have been given a sort of an ordinance. This is how you're going to serve. They don't have a say in the matter. They don't have to decide. They don't have to choose. Whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands or instructs those things, those creations to do, that's what they do. So plants behave the way plants behave. Animals behave the way animals behave. A cow will do what a cow is supposed to do. A goat will do what a goat is supposed to do. A chicken will do what a chicken is supposed to do. And this is why you find the most remarkable thing about nature is nature does what nature is supposed to do. Nature does not get involved in the business of others, unlike human beings and jinn, because human beings and jinn have a choice. But nature does not do that. You don't hear about the cows thinking about how they're going to invade the chicken hen and the chicken coop. You don't hear about the trees wondering what they're going to do about the consistency of squirrel droppings. Right? And this is why he says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, لَهُمْ قُلُوبٌ لَا يَفْقَهُونَ بِهَا وَلَهُمْ أَعْيُنٌ لَا يُبْصِرُونَ بِهَا وَلَهُمْ آذَانٌ لَا يَسْمَعُونَ بِهَا. These three components are components of intelligence. The heart by which to understand, the eyes by which to see, and the ears by which to listen. So a composition of your internal intellection as well as your external. You've got intelligence and intelligence. Intelligence is external. This is what the senses do. They pick up information. That's intelligence, intelligentsia. And then, so this is where you get the word telephone from, or television from, television. You see, it's what the senses does to see. It's television. And then you've got telephone. Phone is the phonetics, the phono, which is sound, Greek word. And tele, which is external, right? So, and then you've got intelligence, that's internal. And those are those three components. Then he says, أُولَٰئِكَ كَالْأَنْعَامِ. They're just like cattle. But that's a negation. That's a form of, you make a statement, then you negate your own statements, and then so that you can prove a point. It's a form of rhetoric. بَلْ هُمْ أَضَلُّ. No, rather, they are worse. بَلْ هُمْ أَضَلُّ. They are worse than cattle. How could you be worse than cattle? Because a cow does what a cow is supposed to do. A goat does what a goat is supposed to do. But the human being is not doing what he's supposed to be doing. He's supposed to intellect. And he's supposed to intellect towards righteousness. أُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْغَافِلُونَ. They are all heedless. They are lost. They are in delusion. So, وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. Was not created, the jinn and mankind were not created except but to serve Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala willingly, to make the decision and to commit to that decision of serving his Lord. If you look in the tafsir, you will find all the tafsirs I've read, they all say that many of the early companions, like Ibn Abbas is most cited in this riwayah, they said that this means, yani, liya'budun means liya'rifun. Because Arafah comes before the servitude. You understand? Understanding, to know comes before servitude, because you're an intelligent being. The instructions are not just put into you. You have to understand the instructions. You see, the instructions are given to you, the ordinance is sent down to you, the sharia is sent down to you, and then you have to use your aql to understand them. So you need to know first, then you can come to serve those instructions, that ordinance. So Imam al-Ghazali says, in terms of his own rendering here, معناه إن خلقنا القلب. What this means is that we created the heart. وَأَعْطَيْنَاهُ الْمُلْكَ وَالْعَسْكَرَ. And we gave it a dominion, and we gave it all these troops. وَجَعَلْنَا النَّفْسَ مَرْكَبَةً. And we placed the soul as its vessel. حتى يسافر عليه من عالم التراب إلى أعلى إليين. Until it can journey on it. It can use all these or everything that it has been given to journey from, and this is why we say that a human being is in a journey. This is the journey of life. You're not here to stay. You're not here to, this is just a manzil, it's just a point of it's a destination among this route that you're going to take. So you're on a journey. الدنيا معبرة فاعبروها ولا تعمروها. The world is a bridge. Cross over the bridge. Don't build on the bridge. You're not here to stay. So that it can journey upon it from the material realm, alam al-turab, this realm of dust, of soil, of matter, of material, to the highest of the high, which is the divine presence. ثم استوى على العرش. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is above the throne. That's the highest of the high points. To be in the divine presence. And this is what like he said before, right? The process of knowing is through the senses. If you look in Surah, actually let me continue. I'll explain it a little bit better once I have this. فإذا أراد أن يؤدي حق هذه النعمة جلس مثل السلطان في صدر مملكته. So if it wants to fulfill its right to this ni'mah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, all it has to do is sit like a king, like a sultan in the midst of its dominion. If you want to fulfill, because this right is every human being's right. It's the right to rise from the lowest to the highest. Remember, he sent the human being into the ard, the lowest of the low. So, and what did the angels question on that? Right? Why are you sending them down there? Why not keep this creation up here with us? This maqam of only pure praise and glorification. Why send them to the place of turmoil and conflict? Because that's the lowest of the law. The lowest of the law is a dominion of constant conflict and constant this. You see, because you've got like the laws, like Newton's laws of motion. What do they say? Like the second law states that when two objects collide, there'll be destruction. And every force or every action has an opposite reaction. So it's a realm of conflict. This world that we are in is a realm of conflict. There's never peace here. It's a realm of constant turbulence. This is why we have so many problems. It's actually a realm of problems. You will never find absoluteness here. All these people who think, I'm looking for certainty, I want a surety, I want security, this is wishful thinking. You're in delusion, you're wishing it, this is fantasy. You're never going to get that. You're never going to get that. This is a realm in which you have to overcome obstacles and solve them as they come your way. It is a realm in which you have been sent to be tested. Every moment is a question, and every question has got marks. And in the end of the exam, you will be evaluated as to how well you did. That's a weak allegory, but you get the point. Analogy, not an allegory. So this right is the right to rise from the lowest to the highest. And what did he do? What did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala do to give the human being a unique instrument that no other creation has got? And it's the gift or the ability to execute language in acquiring knowledge. No other creature has got that ability. How to execute language. Because we are a speaking animal. No other creature has got that ability in which they could use language to abstract from reality, to know from the creation, to abstract its knowability, right? The ilm is abstracted from the alam, and using the ilm, it can rise up the ranks to come to a final knowing. All of academia related to nature, chemistry, biology, all these physics, even mathematics. Academia that's related to nature those who are actually on the really highest degrees of academia, that's what they're looking for. They are trying to answer the fundamental questions. Where does all this come from? Where is it originated from? Why are we here? And they are trying to resolve it, those who are sincere. Some are sincere in trying to seek out the one who has originated it. They are sincere, some are sincere. Others are just, they are aimless. They're looking for ways that they can go to Mars and build an amusement park over there. That's what their objective is. Anyway. So if you want to fulfill this right, it's a haqq that every human being has got. And when we talk about human rights, this is the fundamental right. Everyone has the right. And you'll find this in many constitutions around the world. Every human being has the right to the pursuit of happiness, true happiness, contentment of the heart, which will be found in the divine presence. So every human being has that right. And this is why we say that every human being will receive inspiration from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in their heart so that they can activate that. In other words, they don't have an excuse that, oh, I didn't know, or there were no reminders, or the alarm didn't go off. No excuses. Every human being gets an inspiration that allows them to recognize the divine presence. And this is what, when you follow this haqq, when the human being is able to abstract this, ultimately the ilm should lead him to ma'rifah, and ma'rifah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because the further you go into the alam, the deeper you go into understanding the alam, ultimately you come to the question, the fundamental question, where did it all come from? You see, who originated all this? There's only one of two debates you can follow, or one of 2 points you can go. Either it just happened by itself, or somebody made it happen. Now, language plays the dominant part in many of these debates, and this is why debating in the English language, it can be shifty. It can, like, the semantics can shift. Like, you'd have to be very proficient in English in terms of grammar, logic, and rhetoric of the language to really execute an argument against any atheistic belief that says, or argument that says, oh, it doesn't have any purpose. It just came out of whatever. It was always just there, or something or the other. And this is one of the arguments that the atheists love bringing out, is how can something originate from nothing? They can't explain that. They can't really explain how something originated from nothing. It just doesn't click for them. So they see that as a fallacious argument. In fact, there was a paper published recently, some months back, a physics paper, that they did an experiment, and they created like a magnetic field, and then they observed and they found that actually particles just started coming into, they just popped into that space. So the conclusion of that study was, oh, we can actually make something out of nothing. And this is really their arrogance, because if you read the paper, like, if you can understand language, you can really get the arrogance from that. It's really arrogance, and that arrogance. When I read that paper, I had to laugh. Not at the sciencey stuff, like the calculations and all that. That theoretical made sense, the experiment itself, but at the conclusion of it, I just had to laugh at the stupidity of these people. And the arrogance prevents them from seeing the truth, because I say, what a fallacious argument to conclude with that and say, okay, so this proves that something can come out of nothing. Well, what about the magnetic field? That had to be there first, isn't it? What about the magnets? Didn't you put the magnets there? So what about the primordial particle in the beginning of the creation of the universe? Who put the magnetic field there? Huh? Who brought the magnets? If that's your proof that something came out of nothing, therefore God doesn't exist. Like, it's very strange how these people think. I mean, you have to. This is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, if you ask them sincerely, if they were to speak sincerely, and you ask them, who created the heavens and the earth? Who created them? If they're truthful, they will have to conclude that it was Allah, that it was God, because there's no other explanation for all this existing. It has to be God. This is why He is Fatiru Samawati wal Ard. He is the originator of the heavens and the earth. Everything goes back to Him. Everything goes back in a raja'ah. This is that youthful presence. That's the origin of the human being. And then everything goes back to that origin. This is why one of the things about resurrection is that you will be resurrected in your youthful form. You see, you'll be resurrected in your youthful body, not as an old person. Anyway, so he says, sit like a sultan fi sadri mamlakatihi, in the midst of its dominion. وَجَعَلَ الْحَضْرَةَ الْإِلَهِيَّةَ قِبْلَتُهُ وَمَقْصِدُهُ, and place the divine presence as its qibla and its maqsad, as its direction, as its focal point and its purpose. And this what Ghazali is giving you is, there are two things he's giving you. وَجَعَلَ الْآخِرَةَ وَطَنُهُ وَقَرَارُهُ, and place the akhirah, the hereafter, as your destination, because this is the journey. That's the destination. See? As its destination and resolution. In other words, you're here to work towards that fulfillment. Your deeds, your actions are to the fulfillment of that destination. And this is what Ghazali is giving you here, is the purpose of existence, the purpose of being, and then the purpose of life. This is where modern psychologists, they lose out. Because modern psychology only focuses on the purpose of life and negates any form of purpose of being or existence. And philosophers like Heidegger argued that this is what is causing disease in the society. Because you might think about life, and as far as the fulfillment of life is concerned, but no one wants to think about being, just being existent. So there is a purpose why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created you, and then there is a purpose why He put you into this world. There is a reason why He created you, and a reason why He sent you into this world. And the reason as to being sent into this world should be in the fulfillment of the reason why He created you. In other words, your purpose of life should be, if you want harmony, if you want tranquility, if you want to resolve the turbulence within you, the crisis that is taking place within you that is causing you all these problems, the disorder and the depression, whatever term you want to give it, quantitative term, if you want to resolve that, you need to ensure that your purpose of life is in synchronicity with your purpose of being. That's his message, his core message in this text. To reorder yourself internally so that you can place the divine presence as your direction, your focal point, and place the akhirah as your destination. وَالنَّفْسُ مَرْكَبَهُ, and to place the soul as its vessel. وَالدُّنْيَا مَنْزِلُهُ, and to consider the dunya as its alignment, its point of alignment, where it is alighted, its destination in the journey. Like you stay over at like your campsite, you're on a journey, you camp and then you keep moving forward. وَالْيَدَيْنِ وَالْقَدَمَيْنِ خُدَّامُهُ, and the hands and the feet as its servants. وَالْعَقْلُ وَزِيرُهُ, and the aql, the intellect, as its prime minister or its grand vizier. وَالشَّهْوَ عَامِلُهُ, and the shahwa, the concupiscence, as its administrative, it's an administration. وَالْغَضَبْ شِحْنَتُهُ, and the irascible faculty as its defense force, its police force. وَالْحَوَاسْ جَوَاسِيسُهُ, and its senses as its spies. وَكُلُّ وَاحِدٍ مُوَكِّلٌ بِعَالَمٍ مِنَ الْعَوَالِمِ يَجْمَعُ لَهُ أَحْوَالَ الْعَوَالِمِ. And each of these has been given its own dominion, its place, and it has got its purpose. Each of these has been given its own special office in which to operate, so that they can all collectively work towards the state of the entire dominion. All of them, the senses, the hands, the legs, the eyes, the nose, whatever, the body parts, and then all the faculties of the soul, the brain, the intellect, the concupiscence, they're all there. They've all been given their own faculties, their departments, so that they can all work collectively to establish soundness within the dominion. وَقُوَّ الْخَيَالِ Okay, so this section here, it's a brief section, but I wanted to spend a bit more time on this, and unfortunately I don't think we have time. Have we crossed the 1 hour mark? Okay, so we're out of time. Okay, so I will have to continue this next week, inshallah. Yeah, okay. We'll have to continue this next week, inshallah. So the section that he's going to talk about the brain component, and I wanted to spend a bit of time here to explain more about the brain component, and I also wanted to talk about memory, which I don't think we'll have enough time to explain. So, inshallah, we'll continue next week from this section, page 19. And then the next one is... Okay, we'll continue next week, and then we'll cover the next section as well in that session, inshallah. So let's take a break, and then we'll resume for some questions and answers and discussions in about 5 minutes, inshallah. Jazakumullah khairan. We'll see you in a bit. Now, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين بسم الله. Now, questions and answers. You want to check the chat box. I think I saw something. I can't read what's on the chat because it's so far away, but I think I saw something pop up.
If I understood correctly, as eyes are the spies for the king, would you elaborate?
As eyes are spies for the king? Okay. Actually, there was a diagram I was supposed to share also. We didn't have the time today. Could you share the diagram? Could you just share the diagram? And let's go through this quickly. And we'll open the same diagram next week as well. So, so it's basically the same layout we had before that we were looking at the first diagram. The spiritual, ethereal materials, so the ruah, the nafs. Then, if you look now at the bottom portion of that diagram there, so you can see the irascibility and the concupiscence and the intellect, all three components. They have a link to because the brain is the central processor of the body, right? The CPU. Everything insofar as the body is concerned, everything communicates with the brain via the nervous system. And so the brain is what relays that information. It's a two-way communication between the soul component and then the body or the brain component. So the irascible faculty communicates with the brain, the concupiscent faculty communicates with the brain, and then the intellect also communicates with the brain. Different parts of the brain, this is what I wanted to discuss further today, but we didn't have the time to expand on the brain aspect, because he talks about the brain, what the frontal portion does, what the middle portion does, how it functions. He uses allegory, but I was going to expand it more science in the scientific aspect. So you have sensory motor functions and actuations. You have your senses, your organs, and your limbs. So your limbs are your motor functions. These are what are known as motor functions. So the motion, right? the study of this is called biomechanics. The mechanical motions, the forces, the elasticity, the strength of the muscle, and all that. These are called motor functions, the movement. And then you've got the organs, and then you've got the senses. You've got three general categories as far as the body is concerned. So this is the line now, as you can see, the sensory functions. So if the eyes, for example, will communicate with the brain. This is what we've seen. These are the spies now. We went there, we saw that, we saw this, we saw that. That information is gathered by the brain, then the brain allocates that information. Is it meant for the intellect? And then it will be preserved in memory. So you've got short-term memory and long-term memory. You've got explicit and implicit memory, and then you've got what's known as you've got episodic memory, and then you've got semantic memory. So episodic memory is what's happening, and then semantic memory is like the world or the environment in which it is happening, world information. So if somebody was here and did a cartwheel, for example, the cartwheel was what's happened. That's what happened. They did a cartwheel, they jumped. That's information gathered insofar as the occurrence and then the environment. So the light was hitting in this way, the shadow was falling this way, the wall is there, you see this thing is here, this thing is here. That's the semantic. So that information is gathered, and then it is communicated to the intellect to decide what to do with that information, because the heart doesn't deal with information. Okay, the heart doesn't deal with information. Information is outward. The intellect converts that information into ilm, into knowledge. Knowledge is unseen. Knowledge is an unseen entity. This is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells the angels after the demonstration that Adam gives them. After he gave Adam this ability of abstracting reality using language, he put things for the angels, told them, give information about anbi'uhum bi asma'ihim. Inform me about these things. And they were unable to do that. La ilma lana illa ma 'allamtana. We have no knowledge except what you've given us. In other words, we can't do that. We can't look at an object and tell you what it is, or define it, or explain it, or describe it. We can't do that. Unless you tell us what it is, then we will know what it is. Intuitive knowledge. But the human being was able to do that, to demonstrate that by abstracting, by naming something, and then, see, the Quran speaks in universals and it speaks in comprehensive language. So you have to expand all this from there. I hate it when people look at ayat mutashabiha and then they take literal meanings from that. You've just missed the point of it all. There's no point in you even looking at that because you didn't get it. You have to expand this. The naming is not just giving it a name, it's giving it its description, its definition, understanding it, right? So the human being was able to do that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then said, Inni a'lamu ghaiba samawati wal ard. I know the unseen of the heavens. In other words, there's an unseen thing that is taking place here that even the angels cannot see. You see, even the angels have a limitation to how much they know of the ghaib. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows a lot more. It's infinitum. He knows everything about what's unseen to all other parts of creation. So the angels have a limitation to what is unseen of that reality. So the senses, in this case, in allegory as a spy, Ghazali says these are, and many of the scholars gave this allegory. Remember, he said it before, in that allegory, it's mashhur, it's known, it's a very known, well-known allegory. That the senses are like spies. They are the ones who go and probe for information. They are the ones who are constant, and they are completely in tune with material reality. Like there is no barrier between the reality and the sense itself. This is why, like the eyes, for example, right? The pupil, it's a hole. See, it's basically it's a hole. Information goes right into it, right? The ears, it goes right into it. Even the nose, it goes right into it. The mouth, the tongue, it's right. The taste is on the surface of the tongue, and the sense of touch It's right there on your skin, right? There's nothing preventing them, so they acquire information from the realm of information directly. And so they are the ones who are spying for, so your ears are constantly listening for sounds. Your eyes are always moving in search of light. You see, like they've done experiments, for instance, to see which parts of the brain respond to this sensory actuation. Like, for example, like one of the experiments that they have done is to see, left side or right side, which part lights up when light is flashed. So doctors will usually do this to see whether or not you are cognizant. Are you responding to stimulus? So they'll take a torch and then they'll flash it before your eyes to see whether the eyes are following that. Or do the pupils dilate? Do they open and close when light is passed through it? To see whether or not there is connection between the senses and the brain. They'll also ask you questions like to see whether or not your orientation is correct. They'll ask you questions related to time and space, because those also affect the temporal and spatial dimensions of your brain, left side, right side. So they'll ask you questions like, do you know what the date is? Like, what's the date? Or they'll ask you questions like, who is the president? Or do you know where you are? Something like that, to see whether or not you are oriented to time and space. And then so after the information is gathered from the senses, now the spies have collected this information, it's handed over in hierarchy, right? The spy doesn't go directly to the king. He goes to his commanding officer, who then takes it to the chief, who then takes it to the vizier, and then who takes it to the king and says, this is what our spies have determined. And so the king then makes a decision. So this is essentially the connection. So senses, brain, intellect, heart. That's your equation. That's your linear equation. Senses, brain, intellect, heart. The spies, the brain, he actually, in the next section which we missed, he equates the brain to like the chief, the war chief, for example. So the senses report to the war chief reports to the vizier reports to the sultan makes the directive, send the troops this way or send the troops that way, bring provisions, allocate provisions like this, or do like that, or ration provisions for now, or something like that, whatever directive that the king has to give. Now, okay, that was a very long, because we missed that section, but I didn't want to do it an injustice. So, inshallah, you can stop sharing the screen. Alhamdulillah. Yes, whose hand is up?
Assalamu alaikum, Ustaz, and Eid Mubarak.
Alaikum salam. Alaikum salam, Eid Mubarak.
Glad to see you again.
Yeah.
I have a question regarding the spirit and the soul.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if my imagination is good or not, but I'll tell it to you so you can judge. According to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the spirit is the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when Allah commands the spirit, we do not have any free will, and we do not have our own consciousness. It is totally up to Allah to decide what to do, right? Now, as far as the soul is concerned, when our soul, I guess, is connected to the spirit and our body, does our soul do we have total control of ourselves when Allah doesn't have the control of the spirit over us? Is it through the soul that we have, through the free will, our own consciousness, even though consciousness originates from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but Allah basically gave us that command, so we'll have our free will and we'll have our own consciousness, and basically we can command our body without Allah commanding the spirit. Am I correct in that?
I think the word you're using is what's wrong. The word control, that's the wrong word. Because to understand free will, to understand free will, if you want to understand free will, the best way of understanding is the way Imam Ali explained it. So a man came to Imam Ali and said, what is free will? Like, how do we understand free will? And he told the man, lift one leg up. And he lifted one leg up. And then Imam Ali told him, without putting that leg down, lift up the other leg. And he said, I can't, obviously. So Imam Ali said, free will is in between those two. In other words, you have a certain range of control that Allah has given you. There's a certain range, parameters, within which you can function. That's the functionality of the will has got those parameters. Outside those parameters, you don't have control. It's Allah who controls it. Again, the word control is what would mess up the understanding of that, because it's power, right? It's Allah's power, and trying to understand it it will break down. It will break you down. You can't comprehend qudra. You can't comprehend Allah's power, because you're trying to understand how He does it. It's beyond us, because His knowledge, we can't know what He knows. What he's able to, how much he can encompass, like the quantitativeness, that's not something we can rationalize. There's no limit to his knowing. And then there's the factor of time also, right? Like, we don't know the extent of time, so we don't know how much control we can have over a thing. This is one of the things about the modern world, is they're obsessed with measurement. Because one of the meanings of qadr, qaddara yuqaddiru, is to measure. And so measurement of a thing can give you control over the thing. The more you can measure it, the more control you have over it. But measurement is not only physical measurement, it's also metaphysical. And one of the things that mankind cannot measure is time, quantity of time. We don't know how much time there is. This is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keeps reminding us that they keep asking you about the hour. No one knows the hour. That knowledge is with Him. So if you don't know the end of a thing, if you don't even know the beginning of a thing, you can't measure it. If you can't measure time, you can't measure anything else. Because time is a unit, is a fundamental unit of measure. Everything is measured in accordance to time. Speed, velocity, direction, all these things, they're all measured in reference to time. But insofar as now the body, the spirit, and the soul, there's actually, in reality, there's a lot about our body and our soul that we don't have control of. There are a lot of things that we don't have control of. Like the inner mechanisms, you can't control them. You can't control how much bile you should produce to digest your food. You can't control that. It just does it. And He says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I had written it down, I forgot. Inshallah, I'll remember it. I'll give you the reference of that, the ayah in the Quran. There are functions within you that you have no. Ghazali says that much later on, in so far as the body also. There are functions within you taking place that you have no idea are taking place. Like your neurons firing when you're thinking. You don't know which neurons are firing. You don't know which one's firing at what intensity and connecting to which other. You have no idea what all that is. Like, you don't have control of that. You can't control, like you can't stop yourself from breathing. You have to breathe. The air has to keep coming in and out. You can push the threshold of it, like you can hold your breath for, let's say, a minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, I don't know what the longest is, but you can't have control over that and then there are volitions of the soul as well that are uncontrollable. Really, there are. And this is why the religion gives you ease in certain functionalities. Like your Lord knows that you don't have control over these things, and He's made it in that way. So you have to eat, you have to drink. Certain desires you do have to fulfill. Like as adults, we have to fulfill the sexual desire. It's very difficult to abstain from that. And there are people who live their whole life in abstinence. It's possible, you can, but for the majority, you can't. It's very difficult to control. And the volition, the will, the soul has got its own, motion. Like it has its own, what's the word I'm looking for? It has its own inertia. You see that in children mostly. You see? Like a child will be, let's say a child will be playing or something, and then they reach out for something. They want to touch something. And then you call out and you say, no. And then the child just looks at you and gives you that look like, I can't help it. I have to touch it, and they touch it, right? I can't help it. That's the inertia of the soul. It's uncontrollable for the child, you see. For the adult, you might be able to control it. But there's a very small range. If human beings, we're very arrogant people, species, and a forgetful species. We don't realize these things. We think that we have we have so much ability to function that we forget that there are parameters, there are boundaries that we just cannot cross. We can't go over those. We forget that. But we are actually very limited in our functionality if we really think about it. There's only so much that we can actually do. And we can push those boundaries just a little bit, just to stretch a little bit, but we can't breach it. This is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in one of the meanings of the ayah, Ya ma'ashar al-jinni wal-ins, in istata'atum an tanfudu min aqtari samawati wal-ard. Fanfudu la tanfuduna illa bi sultan. Like if you think that you can breach those boundaries, the parameters, the limits of the heavens and the earth, give it a try. You won't be able to unless I give authority. Unless He gives authority, you won't be able to breach it. So there's only so much will that we can execute. And the will has been given those parameters enough for you to sustain your purpose. Everything else goes, by the way, everything that we talk about goes back to the purpose of existence. It can't, there's nothing else, because once you take that away, then it's basically annihilation. This is where you get the ideology of nihility or nihilism, you see. If you take the purpose away, it all goes back to that purpose. This is what that ayah means. It's so concise and everything packs into that. Illa liya'budun. Except for that purpose. There is nothing else. So even the will has been defined and the parameters have been defined for that purpose. The body has been designed for that purpose. All the limitations of the body, the functionalities of the body, everything has been designed to fulfill that purpose. This is why you wonder why we can't be as fast as a cheetah, or as strong as a lion, or as tall as a giraffe, or in similitude of other creation. Because they have been created for their purpose and they've been given those things, attributions for their purpose. The body, the human being has been created for this purpose. You see? So I don't know if I answered your question, Roshan, but I would don't think about qadr. Leave qadr aside. That's not something you can really comprehend. No, I mean, scholars have a difficult time even making any sort of they will give a bit of, an explanation here or explanation there, but it's not something that we can comprehend, and it will drive you off the path. It will. But insofar as the will is concerned, that's how it functions. You've been given certain functionality and you've been allowed to function within that, within those limits. Outside that functionality, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who regulates everything. He's the one who puts in fact, it's a sophisticated argument in Aqidah, and it's primarily like in Ashari Aqidah, you'll study this. If you're Ashari and you go, advance in Aqidah, you'll probably study this, and because it's also studied in quantum physics. What's known as the quantum field theory in quantum physics, it's actually a topic in Aqidah, which is very interesting. But the theory is in understanding that every atom, like what keeps all the particles together? The field, right? The field. So it's argued in physics that there's a field, there's a force field that keeps the particles together until you've got solid objects. Like, so all the particles that make up this glass, all the atoms and so on. What's keeping all those things bound together? In Aqidah, the argument is that it is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who is doing that. And He is every instance, every particulate piece of time. So we've got hours, and then we've got minutes, then we've got seconds, then we've got microseconds, then we've got nanoseconds, and then smaller and smaller and smaller intervals of time. There's only so much that we can understand insofar as how much of an interval it can be, because that's the limit of our comprehensibility. But in the tiniest particulate instance of time, every moment that shifts, the argument is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is disintegrating everything in reality and then bringing it back together again. Disintegrating it and bringing it back together again. In the tiniest, this is why we don't perceive it. Because we are on the microsecond level. The smallest I think we can perceive is the microsecond and the second. So we're not actually seeing all the atoms and everything breaking down. Sheikh Hamza Yusuf, in one of his, I think you can find a lecture of his online, he gives on YouTube. He spoke of something he witnessed while he was in Mauritania. And he said he was sitting and he saw his teacher, Murabitul Hajj, was teaching another student, and he took some sand and then he blew the sand like in dust particles. And he told the student that if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was to freeze time, if He was to freeze this moment, you would see the world like this. Like you would see the world in particles. You see? So the argument of control and power, this is why you can't comprehend it. Like, how is that possible? I mean, this, in terms of quantum physics, it's an unresolved argument, an unresolved theory. It's one of those, like string theory is one of those arguments as well. How is everything being held together? Where's the origination of it? Blah, blah, blah. So this is why you can't comprehend it. How much power and how much control. Okay, I've been given the time indicator. Now, next question.
How can we understand this so-called passion, for example, art, music, and other things? Some people take it as their life's purpose.
Yeah, so arts, music, these things are more what you would call a higher society. So there is a hierarchy in learning. So in Islam, every science was considered an art, fannun min al-ulum. So everything was considered an art form. And art is part of human beings. It's not so you've got what society defines as art, music, blah, blah, blah. And then you've got what is actually inherent in the human being as a qualitative aspect of the human being. So you've got the left side of the brain, you've got the right side of the brain. You've got the side of the brain that's analytical, that's quantitative. This is where your mathematics and your logic and all these things come in. And then you've got the other side, which deals with creativity and emotions and these things. Art is related mostly to visual aspects like aesthetics, color, imagery, and then music is related to resonance. And music, by the way, in the traditional sense, was one of the sciences studied in what's known in the Greek tradition as the quadrivium. So in the quadrivium, you had arithmetic, geometric, music, and then astronomic. So that was quantitative, and it had to do with number. So the arithmetic was number in prime, number itself, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. They didn't have zero at that time. Zero was invented by the Indians. So the number in prime, the asal number, the real quantity. And then everything else is like a multiple or an addition of those. And then geometric was number in space. Number in space. So dimensions and all that. And then music was number in time. So music, has anyone ever done like studied music here in online? Here I know no one except me maybe. On the Zoom and in class, has anyone ever studied music, like musical charts? You know, like what's a clave and what's an octave? What's a clef? What's a treble? Has anyone never done that? I'm guessing no. Okay, so in musical charts, you know the funny things. I'm going to. I don't know what they are. They actually indicate the timing of each note. So it's not just about the notes.
I don't know how to raise
Sorry?
and I don't know how to raise
Oh, you can. Just unmute yourself. It's fine. Have you studied music? Don't worry about haram and halal. We are not discussing fiqh here. Have you studied?
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
It wasn't about music. I
Uh-huh.
did do band in middle school and high school, but I just had a different question.
Uh-huh.
I'll just wait for you.
Okay, all right, okay. So that the musical chart, the person who's reading the chart, right, is reading the timing between the notes. So it's not just about the tone, it's also the timing of it. So each beat and each, it's got a timing. Why? Because music is a resonating thing and the soul is a resonating entity. So the soul gets affected by music. And this is why there is a khilaf and an ikhtilaf, which are two different things. There's khilaf and ikhtilaf about concerning music in our tradition. The ikhtilaf is less, the khilaf is more, depending on whether permissible or impermissible, and then what's permissible, what's not permissible, and all those things. Because music has an effect on the soul. It does. And different kinds of music will have different kinds of effects. And the godless world has tried and tested this. It's not just about frequency, by the way. Pitch and amplitude and all these things, they resonate with the soul in different ways. So all these kind of music that comes out from their hip-hop, rap, all the tunes and the way they're structured, they sound good. It's not just about the sound portion. It's about also the timing, because it affects the soul. And then classical music had a different effect on those people at that time as well. And by the way, composers in the classical sense, these were not just arbitrary like celebrities. These were people who studied they had like mathematics and physics and all these things. They were polymath scholars. Like for example, in our tradition, like Al-Farabi, for example, was an accomplished musician, in addition to an accomplished logician, as well as a faqih, and also a mufassir. Like he wrote what's known as Kitab al-Musiqa, Al-Kabir, the great book of music, in which he had different maqamat, of which like you could play on the oud and it would make someone fall asleep, or make someone laugh, or make someone cry, or make someone angry. And when he came, like for example, he went to one of the sultan. They had like a gathering, and they asked him different questions like in logic and stuff, and then they asked him about grammar and language, and then they asked him about music. They said like, can you play music? Like, can you play the oud? And then he said, Hati, bring it. And then he played a tune, and they fell and they started laughing. And then he played a different tune, they started crying. And then he played another tune and they all fell asleep. So music has an effect on the soul. And this is why people, they do get attracted to certain kinds of music and they don't like other kinds of music. And it is reflective of your inner state. So if you like this trash that comes out from the West, like all the hip hop and the rap and all this, the gaga, and all this like gangster, like gangster music. Like, why do they behave like that? That's a real, you have to ask yourself a question. Why do they do that? What's with the pants, showing your underwear up until your knees, and the weird hat and everything, and then what's with the guns and the drugs, and that's a reflective of a society that's diseased. And people who like that music, they actually tend to behave in that way, and it speaks to their psychological states. The same thing goes for rock music. Rock music, by the way, even rock music is much more dangerous because it's got levels. Like you could see, like this, what you would call like soft rock, because by the way, rock music originates from the blues, and many of these blues musicians were involved in witchcraft. You can do the study and go look back into their history. You know, a lot of what's embedded in rock music is very closely tied to the effects of witchcraft, and I wouldn't recommend this, but because I don't think anyone should watch this, but there's a documentary you can look. It was done by Netflix, I believe. It's a 3-part documentary. It's called Woodstock 94 or 96 or something like that. Woodstock something, all right? Now Woodstock it was a big concert that was held in the United States. They did a documentary of this. If you have a stomach, like if your stomach is strong and you don't regularly like puke and stuff, you watch that documentary. You want to see real demons, real demonic people. You want to see the human being at his lowest, at his most disgusting. Go and watch that documentary. I'm telling you, you'll get sick. You will get sick. You will puke. I watched it, I'm telling you. It got me upset. I had to go outside and get some fresh air. And I don't usually do that. I don't have like a reflex. But you watch that and see the effect that music is having on these people. Literally. Like you can see the crowd, the way they film the crowd when the tones take certain measures. You can see what happens to the crowd. Wallah, it's an amazing thing, and they filmed that whole. I mean, they can't make sense of what that is, but you know, it's anyway. Long discussion. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. Question. Walaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
I had a different question, but now that you're talking, I have another question about, I think it's called like binaural beats or something, where it's like these different tones that happen at the same time, and it can have an effect on people. So ever since I learned about that, like if I ever heard something strange, I just like stopped it, and like if it has like a background tone or something, because from what the little that I heard about it is that it can, like you were saying, it can have an effect on you, or it can hypnotize you, or it can have a negative impact on you. And so my question is about, there's some like Muslim channels that have like good content, like it talks about Islamic information, but also like current events and social issues, and a lot of unique content that you don't find other places. But I noticed that sometimes like the intro of their channel would have like this like music in the beginning, and it was just kind of a little bit like disturbing to me, like why are they putting that? Maybe it's, and then I said like maybe it's me being too judgmental, but at the same time I was like, maybe it was just an unintentional thing that's their intro to their channel. But at the same time, I want to be a little bit protective of my own self. So I don't know if you have any comments on that.
Well, that's why there's a khilaf on the subject itself, and an ikhtilaf as well. So the ikhtilaf is a contradictory opinion, like there's a conflict. So some ulama, they will say, you know, it's definitely like blanket haram, just don't listen to music. But it depends on the definition of what you would define as music. Like, because there is music in its true form. Everything in reality is musical. the birds chirping and different kinds of sounds, rhythmic sounds, this singing and all these things. I mean, recitation of the Quran, for example, it's got its melody. So separating what you would call entertainment music from symphony and melody, that's an important thing, first of all, when making a judgment. And then, identifying exactly, because I've got some content on my YouTube as well, and I've put some background music on that. And I'm selective because here's the thing, I've studied music. Really, I have. I've even played instruments. I've composed my own music. I understand the effects that these things can have and in what aspects they can have. So I'm really selective about what I will put there. Because again, music is supposed to be, like, it has to have an emotional touch. It's not It's not supposed to put you in a state. Because music, what it will do is, the soul is resonating and the soul will attempt to sort of synchronize itself to other frequencies, you see? And so if there's a certain song playing, it will put you in a different state. This is why when music plays, people will often tend to, like, they won't even realize it. They'll either tap their, hands or their feet, or they'll probably click their fingers or something or the other. And they won't realize it because that's what it does, right? So you have to be selective in that. People who actually do put in music, they need to realize what it is that they're actually doing. Because it's not just about the melody. It's not just about the sound. It's not just about the sound. It's about what's known as maqamat. This is why, if you listen to a lot of modern Quran reciters, they'll recite the Quran in very elaborate mannerisms and sounds and, different kinds of melodies, but it won't have any effect on you, on the heart. It won't have any effect. It'll sound good, but it won't, because they don't actually know what the maqamat are. You see, the maqamat are, so certain ayat have to be given a sad maqam. Certain ayat have to be given a happy maqam. Certain ayat have to be given a stern, like ayats that speak about the hellfire. You have to give it a bit of an oomph to it to really wake you up. So they don't know these things. And even like you're saying about the YouTube things, many of these channel content creators, they don't know these. They'll just take something that, okay, it might be Islamic. Oh, there's no instruments. Or, oh, there's no this. Or, oh, there's no that. Even these nasheed artists and this stuff, they'll just take out they'll just sanitize the lyrics. Really, it's, at the end of the day, you want to call it nasheed or hip hop, it's the same thing. Really, it's the same thing. What's this artist's name anyway, I don't want to get into that. But they'll just take and they'll replace the words, they'll put in Allah and Eid and Mubarak and Dunya and blah, blah, blah and Rasul and all these things. They'll put in the Islamic words, but it's the same tone, the same frequencies, the same music, the same instruments, the same everything. And then they'll call it halal entertainment. Because they did that, you see. They just cleaned it up, they did wudu, and then they made the thing, and then they call it halal entertainment. But it's the same thing. And unfortunately, I've met some of these people, and I don't really take favor to them, whatever it is that they're doing. Because that's not what it's meant for. It's like you taking a Christmas tree, okay, bringing it into your house, but then instead of putting those red and yellow and green balls, you put papers on that have Allah written on it and Eid written on it and this written on it. And then on the 25th of December, you go and tell everybody Eid Mubarak. That's essentially what it is you're doing. Anyway, now go ahead. You had another question, yeah?
Yeah, the other question was about you mentioned about how the external reflects the internal at times. And so it's, alhamdulillah, now we're starting the process of learning about our own nafs. But how do you apply that knowledge in seeking out companions? Because, Surah Kahf said, I'm just paraphrasing, but, be patient at finding those that remember Allah in the morning and the evening, seeking Allah's face. So that's Allah's instruction that human beings need other companions, to support each other. So those examples you're giving that sometimes people out of naivety, they put music and they don't even realize what they're doing. And then on the other hand, sometimes it could be an intentional thing, or how, I guess it's case by case, but how do you, if you can just touch on how to seek good companions, balancing out, protecting yourself, or maybe it's your own ego that says, oh, they did something wrong and now I don't like them, but it had nothing to do with them. It was your own ego, and it fulfilled something in you that astaghfirullah, felt good to judge others. There's so many components in it that if you have any insight or can give clarity on that.
Well, there's actually it's actually very broad. There's one thing is there's a side to that certain souls are actually meant for each other, not just in terms of marital relations, but even just friends. And this is because in the pre-world, we'll come to Imam al-Haddad's section, and I'll talk about this a bit more. But some of the ulama say that some of the souls actually met in the pre-worldly stage before coming into this world. So sometimes we meet these souls and there's a sort of a reminder that we have actually interacted. We have this feeling like I've known you from before, right? So that just automatically makes that comparison. Now, the real thing that makes companionship is like-mindedness. A lot of like-minded individuals will tend to have a connection, particularly, and it's to do with intellection. So, people who have for me, for myself, I like the company of people who think. I like the company of people who will, not academia. I'm not talking about academia. I'm talking about people who will engage in intellective discussions, because I'll feel like part of the engagement. But that's like a perfect case scenario. You won't have that every time wherever you go, right? You have to be with other people. You have to interact with other people. So you need to have some sort of tolerance for other people's inclinations as well, you see. So again, it's like you said, the ego comes in there. Now, if you expect everybody to be like you, then you're going to be alone. That's just a fact. You see, so you have to break your ego as well and reflect on that aspect and say, it's fine if they want to do something else, we'll do that, no problem. For me, like a personal case, I can't expect everybody to sit with me 24 hours of the day and talk about the hadith or the Quran or this text or that text. No. If the group wants to, let's say, go out and do something else, so we'll just go out and do something else. It's fine. But in terms of evaluating whose company you should keep and whose company, this is where intellection comes in, because it's based on what you can perceive and what you can understand. And the more knowledge you have, the better your power of comprehension. One of the most valuable tool you can have in that is logic. Logic is a very powerful tool to have, because we are logical beings and we interact with logic, with each other as well. If you know logic, you can easily, because logic, one of the things it does is it improves the power of comprehension. It allows you to gauge and measure your environment as well as other people. So it allows you to, if you meet somebody and you want to see whether or not this person, is good for me, in terms of company, logic will help you, because when they start speaking or behaving in a certain manner, you'll be able to connect, oh, he did this, therefore this is what it means. But if you don't have logic, you will end up making the wrong evaluation. You might judge an outward action, but that's not who they are in their internal, their true state. You end up judging a book by its cover. You might see that maybe the person has got dirt on their shirt and think that, oh, this guy is, he's got problems with personal hygiene. I don't want to know who this person is. But that's not the case. Maybe it was circumstantial. Maybe it was whatever. You see? But if you have logic, like you'll be able to evaluate better. Maybe you can engage them in conversation and deduce from that conversation what kind of person they really are. When it comes to companionship, what puts a group of people together is how they think, or the frequencies upon which it's intellection. It's not based on emotions. It's not based on feelings. You know, like I like coffee, you like coffee, we're best friends. It's not based on that. It's not based on likes and dislikes. The modern world functions on that. So if you're in university right now, I can guarantee you 90% of your relationships are based on likes and dislikes. And this is why you've got conflicts with everyone. Because you're not forming a bond on what's common between you. You're forming a bond on what's personal preference for each one. You see, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran to tell the Jews and Christians, Ya Ahl al-Kitab, ta'alaw ila kalimatin sawa'an baynana wa baynakum. Come to this common word that is in equity between you and me and us. Meaning, let's leave aside our differences and let's look at what's common between us. So if you're in university, for example, what's common between you and your colleagues? Maybe it's your studies, it's the subjects, maybe it's whatever faculty you are in or whatever extracurricular activity you're engaged in, maybe it's in one of those things, right? That will put you guys together. But if it's based on I like this and you don't like that, and that one doesn't like this and this one likes that, then you're not building a companionship there. It's not worth anything in terms of gauging that. You see, that's as far as friendship. Now, as far as marital, it's about a lot more complex. So we don't have the time for that, inshallah, to discuss now in terms of, deciding or evaluating whether or not somebody is right for your marriage in terms of that companionship. But I hope I answered your question.
Would you also say something about the millimeter and microwave circuits and 5G and 6G?
In terms of what? Who's asking that question?
Ammar Hassan. Millimeter and microwave circuits, 5G and 6G.
You'd have to, first of all, what do you mean by millimeter and what do you mean by microwave circuit? Because Alaikum Salam wa Rahmatullah, yes?
Yeah. When we were talking about ilm, then we said that it could be physics, it could be chemistry, and maybe it could be mathematics. That if we heard, and then it could lead us to from the ilm that it could convert and it lead to the marifa, to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So my question here is like, it's also the technology that is more, like if we go further in the higher frequencies, is the millimeter wave frequencies and the microwave frequencies that we are work with this 5G and 6G communication circuits. So I mean, like from other speakers' lectures, I have feeling that working with these technologies, this 5G and 6G, is not good in terms of Islam or religious type of thing. So my question is, how will you see these things? Like if somebody, or let's say I am working with these technologies, and my intention is not to harm the world, but there are many positive with these technologies as well. And so how should I think, or how should I move on?
Okay, so there are two frameworks to analyze this. Two frameworks in which you can analyze this. One is a psychological framework. The other is an eschatological framework. So in terms of a psychological framework, there are definitely dangers with regards to these. Although the technologies are not fully implemented for them to carry out tangible. See, the problem with these people is that they don't actually have the level of intelligence to anticipate outcome. So Imam al-Ghazali talks about 4 levels of intelligence. There is the base fitra level, and then there is the second level, so a base fitra level regards a priori knowledge that you have with you when you come in. And then the next level is just causal knowledge that you need to have insofar as this world is concerned. So you already know, like a child already knows that two objects cannot occupy the same space, or that 1 and 1 is 2, right? That's something that not someone can teach you. Then the third level, and so that transitions into the third level, which is the learning now. So a majority of people are on the third level, which is the level of learning, acquisition, interpreting data, interpreting symbols, acquiring information, and then converting that. But then there's the fourth level of intelligence, which can determine the outcomes before the occurrences. Now that level of intelligence, that's a higher level of intelligence. And unfortunately, all these people who are coming out with these technologies and everything, they cannot determine that until they have tangible data to work with. So if you were to ask someone like Elon Musk, what is really the ultimate purpose of sending a ship to Mars and establishing, like what is that going to achieve? They'll tell you, oh, the earth is overpopulated, oh, we need to advance civilization, oh, we need to do this. They're not actually thinking about the ultimate outcomes of what they're going to be doing. The same case applies to 5G and 6G and everything. The real question you want to ask yourself is, what is this technology going to benefit? Like, what is the benefit? Can humanity live without it? Is it really necessary? I mean, no one can answer that. I don't know why they can't answer that. Is it really necessary? Is it necessary? Right? Now, what does it do in terms of psychology? The human being is in a spectrum of the electromagnetic field called the electromagnetic spectrum. And there are frequencies on this side which are dangerous to the human being. Likewise, there are frequencies on this side that are also dangerous to the human being. So you've got gamma rays and you've got cosmic rays. Gamma rays, you've got, I can't remember all of them. X-rays, ultraviolet rays, right? And then you've got infrared, and then you've got things like television, radio, all those. And then they go. Now, microwaves are really dangerous. That's a fact. Like, you put your hand inside that actual microwave. That's why it's got an internal shielding on the inside to protect. You know, the glass door has got like a net, a metal net. It's supposed to shield the microwaves from coming outside. Well, look at what it does. If you put a glass of water inside the microwave and really heat it, what does it do to that water? Has anyone ever tried? Does anyone know here? Anyone who does physics here, do you know what happens to water when you superheat it very rapidly, like very quickly? Like, instead of letting it boil and come to a boil, if you superheat it, what happens? It actually explodes. You know that? Does anyone know that? It actually explodes. Now, think about microwaves passing through your body. What does that do insofar as your body is concerned, number one? What effect then that has on your soul? Because any part of your body, as Ghazali mentioned, if any part is malfunctioning, it will affect your state in this realm and in the other realm. It's going to affect your state, your psychological state in this realm and the other. Why do you think we're having all these increased issues, problems of children developing with all these kinds of disorders at that age? Why do you think, I mean, all these parents giving their kids these devices to hold in their hands for long hours? Why do you think they were getting all these things? Autism, ADHD, dyslexia. Why do you think, where are these things coming from? They'll argue, oh, we don't know the cause. No, that cannot be the cause. You see? Oh, correlation, yes, doesn't imply causation. It doesn't. But correlation is still a factor. It can still prompt certain disorder. It can, definitely. You know, there was a study carried out among men who keep their cell phones in their pockets. And they found that these men were having one side of their testicles were shrunk because of that, because of keeping their phones in their pockets for that long. Really. And there are other studies carried out regarding sterility because of that, because of keeping their phone. If you see a lot of these people, a lot of the, they'll actually recommend you don't put your phone next to your ear while you're talking. You put it on speakerphone, at least. Keep it at a distance, because your phone is still receiving these signals. It's passing through constantly. It's constantly updating to the nearest cell tower. Even when it is not being used, when you're not calling anyone or you're not using the internet, it's still doing that. All these people walking around when your phones are full time on data, turn it off. Really turn it off. Because you don't want to believe what I'm saying, that's fine. But if you want, I can sit down and explain the math to you. It will take a while. But it also opens up the doors to witchcraft and sorcery on you. You're wondering how you're getting all these negative emotions and these negative thoughts and these negative energies around you. It's because of the devices you surround yourself with. Switch it off. Turn it off. If you're going to the masjid, turn the damn thing off. Don't put it on silent. Switch it off. Leave it in the car. Why do you even need it with you? You can't just survive half an hour in the masjid without it? Keep it outside. Why do you need it with you all the time? This is why you're having all these problems. Now, you're running right now on technology that's 4G or 4.5 in some countries. This is the effect that it's been having so far. And this is documented data. Like, they've done studies, and you can find the published papers by notable scientists who've done these studies on the effects that these things have, this technology. Consider what's the effect. It's definitely going to be pronounced, because 5G is not just one notch. 5G is an exponential rise. You understand what that means? It's not just, 1G and then 2G is one step and then 3. It's not like that. It is an exponential increment. The effects that this thing will have once it's implemented is going to be monumental. So that's what I'll say. Keep that in mind. That's the psychological framework. Now, the eschatological framework. We don't have the time to discuss that right now. I've been given the signal. We don't have the time to discuss the eschatological framework. But if you want, I will leave it to you guys. If you want to have a session with me about that, you guys select the time. Talk to Saif if he's able to organize that, and we'll have a session. We'll set it up properly and everything. We'll talk about 5G within the eschatological framework and what effect, why it's being implemented, and what it is that those who are implementing it, what it is that they want to derive from this implementation, inshallah. Now, is there any other question? Anything from the chat? None? All clear? The one who is managing the chat box? Nothing?
I have a comment.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to Morocco next week to continue with my study of Tasawwuf. And I have studied the Qasida of Sheikh Muhammad ibn al-Habib.
Mm-hmm.
And also in the group that I'm in, on the WhatsApp group, we are going to go to like a museum in Morocco. And they have given me the Qasida that they chant, that they sing at this museum. Now, I have listened to it. It's very in tune with the soul. That I can say, and they are very good at the rhythm. Like, their voice is like a musical voice, basically.
Mm.
Now, is it okay for me to participate in these chants in the museum?
I wouldn't be able to tell you definitively on that. There's one thing I avoid doing is giving anyone a fatwa. I don't do that. I don't like getting involved in fiqh, permissible, not permissible, halal, haram. I don't, unless it's something definitive. If there's something that has a khilaf on it, I don't like giving anyone a definitive, because I don't want to take that burden on myself in front of Allah on the day of judgment. So this is something that you would have to really evaluate yourself. I personally don't think there's any problem per se. unless it is being done as a worshipful act, then, then that's not something I would advise you would get into. I mean, it's like here in Turkey, for example, they do these things like the dervish dances and the swirling, and they do dhikr circuits. They have like circles and they do all these things. And I've seen them like at my local masjid and everything. So, but I don't like getting into that because it's being done as a worshipful act, and it's not part of the fara'id or the nafila or part of the sunnah to do that. So I stay away from it. But I don't make takfir on those who do it. That's not my task. I'm not going to call anyone a kafir on that or anything. I think you can do your own evaluation on that and maybe ask somebody who is more qualified in ifta, like a mufti who can give you a background on that. What are the boundaries of that? Yeah. But in terms of qasida, like qasida singing, that I don't think there's a haram component to that personally. I don't think there's a haram component to that. It's nice. Qasidas are good. They're nice, especially qasidas with regards to like, the seerah, for example. I like those. Ya Nabi, salam alayka. Ya Rasul, salam alayka. Ya Habib, salam. I like those. So, but don't take it as a worshipful act. It's not a worshipful act. It's like something nice. It's part of the religion in the sense that it's part of the tradition. It's not part of the sharia. Yes, like the burda, for example. Thank you. For some reason, I saw that. I can't read the other. It's so weird. Anyway, yeah, like the burda, for example. In fact, there's a rihla program that Sheikh Hamza did a few years back in Taif, I believe they were in, that he gave a full breakdown on the burda, and it's very interesting. He explains the whole poem, some 400 lines or something. So they're nice, but they're not the primary. They're not the main thing of religion. Qasidas are nice and it's part of poetry and all that, poetry recitals, but they're not part of religion. And so in terms of evaluation, like priority-wise, if you have not yet taken care of your fara'id in terms of ayn and kifaya, and then your sunnah and nafila, then you can't prioritize, that over this. Like you have to prioritize this over that. So I prefer, you've got like, you had circles of dhikr during the Prophet's time, but then you also had circles of knowledge. And in the hadith, you'll see the Prophet ﷺ, he chose the circle of knowledge. He didn't choose the ones who were sitting and doing dhikr. He sat with the ones who were learning. So that's given a high. Now, he didn't negate that. So you can't take from the hadith and say, oh, that's haram because the Prophet didn't sit there. No, he didn't negate that. It's still okay to have those circles, but this one's more priority. Learning is more priority than that. That's okay to do, like in your free time, but until you've accomplished at least this to a certain degree. Now.
Yes, it's more like a learning for me, because I want to learn more about the tasawwuf, and I've been given the opportunity to go there. So I took like 2 weeks vacation just to go there, right? And it's kind of a vacation for me, just to meet with the people as a group, to see, like you say, with when talking to somebody in person is not the same as talking online. So when we going to be there will be a group of people all over the world.
Yeah.
And I'm taking this as a vacation and as a learning experience, basically.
Yeah. No, definitely. If it's a study, that's a good thing, In fact, a vacation in the older sense of the word, a vacation meant to go and vacate, to empty yourself, so that you can fill it with something beneficial. That's what vacation meant. Now it's go and blow your money and have fun. we're filled with more activities than usual. But to vacate was to empty yourself of the worldly aspect and connect with your spiritual. Leisure in the Latin, leisure meant like time to acquire more, like time off from work and time to learn, time to acquire, time to study, time to learn. That's what leisure meant. Now leisure is sit in front of the TV for, anyway. Khair. Let's end here. Unless there's anything else from anyone, we can end for tonight. Now, okay, so anything? No? Okay, khair. Let's end here for today, inshallah. And then we'll resume next week. We'll go back to the same diagram. We'll start off with that. And then some of the questions that you had, I gave a bit of a reserved answer, or I went off on a tangent. So please don't worry about that if the question was not fully answered, because there's another component to the section we did today that wasn't complete. Once we attach that component, a lot of things will start making sense, inshallah. So we'll resume with that next week. So, subhanaka wa bihamdika nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا يا مولانا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم ربنا ظلمنا أنفسنا وإن لم تغفر لنا وترحمنا لنكونن من الخاسرين ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة وهيئ لنا من أمرنا رشدا بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والحمد لله رب العالمين جزاكم الله خيرا, and inshallah we'll see everyone next week.